there are multiple different mechanisms that people use internally to drive performance, and some are really unhealthy. They're effective, but they're unhealthy.
Yeah.
And that's what you're really describing is like some really successful entrepreneurs, it is out of a incredibly low sense of self-worth. It's from wounds from their childhood,
right.
or it's, they grew up in poverty and there's just a fear of not having enough. And so they're constantly hoarding more and more. And I think that it's important. It's easy for us to have a very results-oriented mindset towards how we, talk about things and who we hold up as examples that, and often it's just like, well, this person built something worth a lot of money and really big. I actually think how you build it and why you build it matters as much as the magnitude and the size. And it's actually an interesting crossover. For me, one of the more interesting things is, again, I have this nonprofit background. My faith is a really important part. And to me, one of the most interesting ideas of the Christian faith is that a lot of kind of religious thought is that God basically just cares what you do and you do the right things.
Yeah.
The Christian, Jesus introduces this idea that's pretty radical, that it's like, well, actually, why you do things is even more important than what you do, and that the motivational triggers on the inside, that's actually what God pays attention to. Other people look at outside and results and things like that, but God actually just, goes right past that and uses the X-ray machine and goes right in and looks at, well, why did you do it?
Yeah. And
what were the thought processes? And that is both a terrifying, but also in some ways encouraging idea. And so for me, that's the standard that I'm trying to kind of apply to myself. One of the things I've been talking with our team about recently that I think is a really interesting concept is you manage, when you're in a business context, really any organizational context, you manage several different ways. You manage up, so whoever your boss is, you manage down, the people that report to you manage sideways, your peers in an organization, your partner, but also you manage self. And one of the questions I've started asking people is, what is the voice that you use? What's your internal voice that you use to manage yourself? Would you feel comfortable managing other people with that same voice? And if the answer is no, like that should bother you. Like if you're like the way that you talk to yourself and the way that you manage yourself and the way that you motivate yourself, if that would never fly with an employee, then why is it okay to talk to yourself that way?
Yeah.
And that's a red flag. Like that's not going to go great. And you're not going to be able to just flip some kind of a switch when you kind of quote unquote get there, or you have enough or whatever, that you're going to be able to be content. You're going to be able to feel comfortable in your own skin if that's the way that you get in the habit of managing yourself. So again, this intersection is super interesting to me, and I think it's the thing that's made the business world. The actual making of money is not particularly motivating to me, just as a person. People are very motivating to me, and challenge is very motivating to me. And so some of the things we're talking about are the most challenging things, in a lot of ways, figuring out, okay, how do I build a software that makes it easier for people to understand how to hedge their natural gas prices? That's quite a bit simpler than the question of how do I manage myself in a way where I'm content, and where I'm not having to, result to a bunch of sticks and instead of carrots to motivate myself to do the next thing or to get after it. And so anyway, it's super fascinating. And this is kind of stuff I'd love to talk about. It's one of the reasons why culture is something that I end up talking a lot about, and it has been a huge focus of building Simple Modern.